This video is going to be about how to make wine at home. You're going to need two things: wine yeast and a juice. And you can use bread yeast, and I made two batches with bread yeast, but it makes really bad tasting wine. So you're going to want to get a wine yeast. And I did an experiment where I made like 5 different kinds of apple wine, and I used the different kinds of yeast, and I couldn't tell the difference between the yeasts. So I don't think it really matters what kind of wine yeast you get, but you're going to want wine yeast so your wine actually tastes good. And then the type of juice, I would recommend 100% juice. A lot of juices say 100% vitamin C, but they're not 100% juice. They have sugar. And it'll still work if it has sugar, but I prefer 100% juice. What you're going to want to watch out for, though, is don't get anything that's very acidic, like orange juice, lemonade, pineapple juice, even juices that are mixture of different juices. If they have like pineapple or orange, it's going to end up being a very acidic wine, because when you ferment it into alcohol, the yeast converts the sugar into ethanol, so you're getting rid of the sugar. So if you have orange juice, think about how acidic orange juice is. After you ferment all the sugar out of it, you're going to be just left with a lot of acidity. So the wine isn't going to taste good. So stay away from acidic wines, and I've made all of them. And you can still drink them. I've drank them, and it got me buzzed, but it really didn't taste good. And then make sure it doesn't have high fructose corn syrup. I tried fermenting this, Arizona iced tea, and I tried fermenting sodas, but they have high fructose corn syrup, and it didn't ferment, or it started to ferment, but it fermented so slow that it didn't really work, and I tasted it. There wasn't really any alcohol in it. So make sure it doesn't have high fructose corn syrup. Again, sugar or cane sugar is fine. And then the preservatives, I've heard a lot of people say that you get ones that don't have like citric acid or ascorbic acid. It doesn't matter. I've seen ones that say fumaric acid. It'll still work. So you don't need to watch out for any kind of preservative that I'm aware of. When you sprinkle in some wine yeast and the yeast is working and converting the sugar into ethanol, ethanol is the alcohol that you drink, it's going to create a lot of bubbles. Carbon dioxide bubbles. That's one of the byproducts of the yeast converting the sugar into ethanol. And so we're going to need to take some of the juice out so that this doesn't overflow. And in the beginning I tried doing this without pouring some out, and then it overflowed. And actually this bread yeast, it makes a lot of foam, a lot more bubbles, so it really overflowed. But this wine yeast, it doesn't make that much bubbles. So just look at that much. That's enough. If I was using bread yeast, I would have to take out even more, but this is enough room for the bubbles if you're using a wine yeast. And then you just sprinkle it in. Okay, so that's enough. These packages, they recommend that you kind of put a lot of yeast in, and that's probably so that they can sell more wine yeast. But you only even need one granule, because yeast is bacteria, so even if you only get one little granule, it will multiply. The bacteria multiplies. So I just sprinkle a little bit in, and one of these packets will last you a lot. Probably maybe like 20 batches. 20 of these. I think I've made like 30 wines so far. Other people say that you should shake it, but you don't need to shake it. So I squeeze the air out. I squeeze the air out and I tighten the cap. This way, once it starts fermenting, I'm going to see the bubbles. This is going to fill up with air. And then, yeah, and then I'll know it began fermenting. So like tomorrow or the next day, 2 days from now, this is going to be pressurized. And then I'm going to loosen the cap. I'm going to loosen the cap so that the air escapes, and then I just leave it with the cap a little bit loose. And then I check on it like twice a day, and I squeeze it, and I make sure that air is coming out. Because if you keep the cap tight, it'll probably explode eventually. So I check on it like a couple times a day. I squeeze it hard, make sure air is escaping, and then it's good. But if air doesn't escape, I loosen the cap until air escapes, and then yeah, that's it. So then like 14 days later, you'll have wine. There's a website where you can put in how much sugar is in this, and it will tell you how much alcohol there will be if you ferment it until it's dry. So if you let this ferment until it stops bubbling, that means it's dry, a dry wine, which means there's no sugar in it. So yeah, most juices that you buy in a store, they'll be maybe like 27 or 28, and then I use a little piece of tape. I just close this. And I don't refrigerate it, and it lasts for months. I've had this for months. So most juices, they'll have about 27 or 28 grams of sugar per 8 ounces. This has 36 grams of sugar per 8 ounces, which will be like 8 something. But most juices will end up being about 6.5% alcohol by volume. Okay, so it's a little bit stronger than a beer. A beer is like 5%. And this makes about 2 wine bottles worth of wine. But most wine's like 10 or 13% alcohol. But this one will only be like 8. So maybe it'll be like 5 beers, the equivalent of 5 beers. Because one wine bottle is like 2 12 ounces. And the main point of being able to make wine at home is because you can make unique wines. Because if you go to a store to buy wines, they kind of only have red or white wine. But with this, you can buy like Ocean Spray, Cranberry Peach, Cranberry, Cran-Raspberry, Cran-Mango. All those are good. Those ones are pretty tart. If you like a tart wine, then you want to get like Cran-Mango or just cranberry. If you want to make the wine stronger, you can put sugar in it or juice concentrates. So that's all the information you need to know to make wine at home. So it's been 23 days, which is longer than you need to do it. Like I would recommend a minimum of 12 days. So this has been fermenting for 23 days. So it's going to have more alcohol in it. It's going to be a drier wine, meaning that more of the sugar has been fermented into ethanol. So there's less sugar left. So it's going to be less sweet. As a filter, I just use a paper plate. Just fold the paper plate like this into a funnel. And then I take a paper towel, I fold it in half, and put it in. So here's it's a makeshift filter. It'll just take out the big stuff, if there is any. And it's gonna bubble a lot. It's gonna fizz a lot. Because when you ferment it, when the yeast converts the sugar into ethanol, it releases carbon dioxide, which is carbonation. Bubbles. So there's going to be a lot of bubbles when you pour it. And I have it at an angle right now. That way the yeast settles right here. You don't want to like shake it up or you don't want to jostle it, the bottle, because then the yeast is gonna get all in there and it's gonna get cloudy. So you want to be careful with it. And then I just pour it in. And it fizzes a lot, so you got to do it slow. So the first bottle that you pour, it's going to be really clear, and then as you get down to the bottom of this juice bottle, it's going to get cloudier. So, and this will make about 2 bottles of wine. I want it to be pretty full, because oxygen is going to make the wine sour. That's how wine goes bad. So I want to fill it up all the way. And then in the refrigerator, there's actually still a little bit of yeast in here. So the yeast sediment will collect at the bottom of the bottle. And then I'll leave this in the fridge and you can keep it. It'll last for months. I even made a red wine. And my brother-in-law drank half of it, but then he left it in the fridge. And then I got it back like 3 months later because he thought he didn't know if he could drink it or not. And I drank it and it tasted just like it was new. And that was like a 13% alcohol because I put a juice concentrate into a grape juice. That's how I got it up that high. But it'll last for months unopened. Once you open it, it'll get sour gradually, just like normal wine. So that's how you bottle the wine. It's simple. And thanks for watching.